Shine on, my star. Dante didn't invent anything. He was in the hereafter and saw it all with his own eyes. And when he returned, one lock of his black hair was completely gray, like Lyoshka's, to whom I wrote poems, and with whom I shared a desk. And there was such a hard freeze that they took us to school in the milk truck together with the bottles, crusted over with frozen milk. We sat in fur coats and felt boots, and the teacher in mittens wrote out on the board what I want to be when I grow up. And Lyoshka wrote, Hell Driver. And I sighed and wrote that I wanted to be a poet, and all the others, astronauts. And the teacher in mittens scolded me and Lyoshka because one of us had watched too many Western films, and the other, God knows what she was daydreaming instead of living the life of her own country. And she praised the astronauts. Then Lyoshka said it to me, but everyone heard, Let's go. And we took off. And I sat beside him in a red motorcycle helmet, and in front of us lay all of life and New Year's Day, except that we lacked something for the top of the tree, and Lyoshka said he had a star and he'd go home, and I answered, That's great, only come back soon. And, taking off my shoes, stood on the stool and began to decorate the tree. I hung a glass clock, beads, apples, and though the hands on the clock were drawn on, it started to get dark, and then it grew entirely dark and quiet. Only the apples on the tree jingled when the door flew open, and Timosha, who drove the milk truck, stumbled in. He was breathing heavily, scrunching his cap in his hands, and I laughed. Out of gas? He didn't say anything, just looked at me so that I suddenly asked, Where's Lyoshka? And Uncle Timosha jerked his bare head in the direction of the road. He, what? Broke the star? Uncle Timosha was silent. Broke it to bits? His shoulders shook, and he buried his face in his cap. And I, in a white dress and thin tights, went past Uncle Timosha, crossed the yard, and went out into the road where not a single street light shone in the dark, stabbed in the eye with the shards of Lyoshka's star. And only then did it come to me that it had nothing to do with fuel. The world had ended. And I ran barefoot in the frost. And everyone thought I'd die, but I became a poet. And I met another hell driver. His name was Dante. And when he led me, circle after circle, I looked at the gray lock in his black hair and thought that one such as he had returned from the hereafter. Lyoshka was from childhood, which meant that the hereafter was childhood. And my childhood, the star of my former days, was Lyoshka. And therefore, everything would be okay. And we'd get married, and he'd smile at me with his Gagarin smile, because in point of fact, he wanted to be an astronaut more than anyone. And I didn't want to be a poet either, but I couldn't bring myself to write that I wanted to be Lyoshka's wife.